Second task is organizing. And again, we'll go into more detail about this. Organizing is what you do before you do something so that when you do it, it is not all mixed up. And, Ben Franklin, I'm just saying things that other people have said that are smarter than me, that are excited about organizing. Derek mentioned being on a coding project where you thought you had 8 hours to develop. Ooh, 8 days, units matter. Yes, hours, days, that kind of stuff matters, making sure we have clear expectations. So if you've ever been unable to find a file you spent time on, problem. If you've been working with a colleague on different versions of the same paper, also a problem. If you've needed the final version of a paper that was submitted for review, but you have 2 or 5 files with final somewhere in the title, also a problem. And so organizing and naming conventions can prevent this. It also helps you avoid duplication and find what you need, but it requires thinking systematically about how you save things, and it rewards consistency and uniformity. Organization is contagious, but so is the lack of organization. So if you don't have a place to put things, you're just going to kind of put them in places and it's going to become a disaster very quickly. And organization helps you work faster. I have a dear friend who is not into all of this like workflow and organization and project management stuff. And we were working on a paper of hers, and the first 10 minutes of our call together was her trying to find the paper. It's just kind of wild how we can lose things, and it's easy to understand, but if we have a really clearly organized file structure on our computer, we can hopefully reduce that a little bit. Documenting is another principle. Question. Many younger scholars find themselves working with PIs who do not have these project management skills. Managing from the bottom or having those hard conversations with supervisors about who should do this and how it should be done. Yes, so if you're working with a PI and you're kind of, and this was me for a long time, in the position where you're, and still me on some of my projects, trying to figure out organization, I think asking the questions, hey, how do you want me to organize these files so that we all are on the same page? How should I name these files? Just asking the PI those questions. I know also when I was in graduate school, I would come to my advisor at the beginning of each semester with like a plan of what I thought I was going to do that semester, and then ask them for feedback and say, okay, does this look good? And they would say, oh, actually, you shouldn't submit that paper to that journal, maybe this journal. You're not planning on applying for any awards, you need to, things like that. So Angela, I'd recommend just bringing plans, bringing like a working thing to a PI and then letting them kind of talk through it and criticize it and starting those conversations with them and just say, hey, I want to make sure we're on the same page about where these files go. I want to make sure that you can find things and that other people can find them. And then, proposing some of the things you learn in here might be helpful, and then they can criticize it and decide to go with something else, which is fine. But at least you all will have had that conversation and be on the same page. So yeah, I think just asking, hey, I found that I'm having a hard time finding files when I'm going to work on them. How should we organize things so that it's a little bit more efficient? Or are you always able to find the things I'm working on? Some advisors aren't going to be interested, or some PIs aren't going to be interested in these conversations. I've worked with those PIs, and in that circumstance, I recommend doing your own thing where you have your own set of clean files, and then I have like a dirty folder that I work with them in and try to just give them the things that they want in the places that they want, and then I keep my own nice clean version of everything. So I know that if somebody asked me to reproduce things or find things, I could, and then they can live in their organized chaos or unorganized chaos or whatever it is. So I hope that was helpful, Angela. Next, documenting. So every research project requires many choices. How do you code education? Is it greater than high school or at least high school? I'm a social scientist, so these are kinds of questions I'm asking. What are you going to name this variable? Should I name it gender? Should I name it woman? How did you handle missing data? What modeling decisions did you make? Which control variables? Which versions of control variables? And by control variables, I just mean covariates, or that's another word for it. Does a bigger number mean more? Is 10 more uncertain, or is 10 more certain, less uncertain? Have I done the sensitivity analysis before? Things like that. There are lots of choices that we make. And I don't know about you, but I can't remember like what I ate yesterday. So how are you going to remember the choices that you made? Well, one way to do that is through documentation. And so I'm going to talk to you guys about how to do documentation, but It's also important to realize that the same very reasonable researcher on different days would probably make different decisions, or two different researchers might make different decisions. And so you want to make sure that you can retrace your own steps. Then, and Kazembe, the PIs can be great at giving constructive criticism. I couldn't agree more. Come to them with something and be like, this is what I'm thinking for the organization plan, and have them give you that feedback. Task 4, preserving. So this is kind of a funny comic from PhD Comics. And in the first stage, it's denial. I did not just erase all my data. I surely made a backup somewhere. Stage 2, anger. You stupid piece of crap. Where's my data? Stage 3, depression. Why me? And then 4, acceptance. I'm never going to graduate. This is going to be terrible. We want to avoid deleting data, but not only data, just our hard work. We want to avoid, missing our work. So losing our work. So here are some ways to do that. So syncing files, it's unlikely that you do all of your work on a single computer. So I have my office computer, my home office computer, my laptop, classroom computers for teaching, an iPad, a mobile, like there's a lot of different places for me to access files. And I recommend using cloud storage for that because it saves time and prevents mistakes. So on my computer, I only work out of Dropbox. That documents folder on my computer is pretty much meaningless to me. All of my files are in Dropbox. I don't do that with Box. And the reason why is because you can't have subfolders that people can access in Box. So for example, if I have a big folder called research and I want somebody to have access to just one research project, I can't do that. They'd have to have access to all of my research projects. And you have no control over the file structure in Box. So even though it's free, it's a disaster. Box drives me batty. I recommend putting the money into Dropbox and using it. Google Drive, I know a lot of our students use this, and you might think about how you want to use it. I've kind of gotten in trouble trying to yield to what the students need by using Google Drive because it's not my normal thing, and then I've so I recommend just kind of doing what works for you and trying to have the students adjust to the best of their ability, or RAs or other team members, whatever, just make sure you guys are on the same page about what will work and why, and make sure you can remember it. I do like the version control, Steve, and I talk about how you can restore the files. Dropbox is really nice. So you lead me to my next question. Thank you. It's almost like we planned that. We did not, by the way. Dropbox saves a copy of deleted files in former versions for 1 month for free, or 3 months if you pay. I pay. 3 months is really nice. Box stores deleted files in trash, and Google Drive will keep older versions. So this is nice. It's not sufficient, but it is helpful. So for example, I've accidentally edited files before and then regretted editing a file and gone back and gone to show deleted files, and then you can access the older version of the file. It'll give you like 2 days ago at 10 p.m. and you're like, yes, that is the version of the file I want. That's really nice. You can do a similar thing in Box, which can be great. So you can go back in time. It's lovely and it's helpful. Dropbox is about $10 a month for 2 terabytes, which I have found adequate. Box is free, but again, Box is kind of a disaster. So I don't know. This can happen with non-deleted files if you're not mistaken. Yeah, so just like changing the version of the file and wanting to go back to a prior version. Yeah, you can do that even if you didn't delete it. If you wrote over something that you did, or deleted that really beautiful paragraph that you wrote, or that really beautiful chunk of code accidentally, you can go back and undo that. SharePoint and OneDrive. SharePoint and OneDrive. I've not tried those, to be totally honest. And so I'm going to look into that, and I appreciate it. I should have gone to the workshop last week. So sorry, I can't give you any feedback on those, but I'm sure they're great. I'll give it a look. That could be useful. Another thing that Box, Dropbox, whatever, they're great, but I also recommend having an external hard drive. and one that's not necessarily plugged in to the wall, because if it's plugged into the wall, if there's an electricity outage, it could short the hard drive. So something that's not necessarily plugged in can be useful. And this can back up not only files, but it can back up your software. So you can back up your entire computer. And so, you know, you set these preferences in software and you have all of these things already nice and neat. And then if you get a new machine, it's kind of a process to move it over. But if you have a backup that's plugged in, Mac does this pretty automatically. And I think PCs come out with a function to do this more automatically, but you can save your software, the versions of the software, any preferences you have saved within that software. You just basically have a screenshot of your entire program and it works for you. So I recommend an external hard drive as well. And then they can be pretty affordable as well. Okay, so summary and review. To have good workflow, which is basically team management, organization stuff, you must plan, organize, document, and preserve your work. These steps require an initial investment. They really do. This can take some time, but they will save time in the end and also like stress. They facilitate replication and reproducibility, and they promote accuracy. And those are the things we're working toward.